Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual space. My name, if you don't know me, is Kelly Olshan. I am the program manager at Queen's Council in the Arts. If you are here for Becoming a Arts Entrepreneur workshop, you are in the right place. We're going to get started in a couple of moments, but in the meantime, we would love to invite you all to introduce yourself in the chat, name, pronouns, discipline, social media handle, anything else you want to share would be great. I'm seeing some more familiar faces. If you just joined us, we're just taking a beat to introduce ourselves in the chat and we'll get started momentarily. All right. Hi, everyone. Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us via Zoom and taking some time to chat with us about what it means to be an emerging artist, an arts entrepreneur. We are so pleased to host this event in partnership with Flushing Bank. Before we get started, we would love to just get a sense of who is in the virtual space. So if you can allow me to lead you in just a brief icebreaker activity, um, if you all can either use the raise hand function in Zoom, which is down towards the right under reactions, and you hit raise hand, or if you're on camera, you can just physically raise your hand. We would love to first get a sense. So raise your hand if you are a high school to art school alum. Couple people. Yep, see some familiar faces. Great. Okay, put your hand down. And raise your hand if you are a Queen's Art Fund awardee, either for this year or in years past. Show of hands, manually or great. In the chat, yeah. Congratulations if anyone just received the Queen's Art Fund Award for this fiscal year. Congratulations. Okay, raise your hand if you are neither of those things and you're just joining as a Queen's Art Fund, or sorry, a Queen's Council on the Arts constituent community member. Great. Okay, last question. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if talking about money totally stresses you out. Yeah, 1, 2, yeah, fair enough. All right, well, here to help us tackle our money-related anxieties and unpack what it means to be an arts entrepreneur is the team of Flushing Bank. Flushing Bank has been an amazing partner for Queen's Council on the Arts in that we are fortunate to have Kathy Costas, the CRA officer, which stands for Community Reinvestment Act officer, which I learned recently, on our board. And if you don't know what that means, which I didn't know what that means either, essentially Kathy is the person at the bank responsible for community-based programs, community programs that support programs like high school to art school, for example. So Kathy, if you want to sort of just give us a quick wave as I introduce you.
Yep, absolutely.
Hi, thank you for being here. And then also joining us from the Flushing Bank team for this presentation, we have Kenny Wahaya. Flushing Bank Springfield branch manager, as well as their colleague Eric Hung, branch manager at Murray Hill, who brings 20 years of banking experience to the table. And together they are going to present on content that they know really well, from how to safeguard your funds, prevent fraud, what it might look like to be your own boss, or to really forge a career in art entrepreneurship and arts entrepreneurship specifically. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Kathy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Kelly. That's great. And you know what? This next session came out of the last one where the questions came up about what type of business structure should I have if I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So that's how we got to this session, and a lot of the pieces to this session. Obviously, protecting your funds and your grants, and then what business services or bank services do you need to know about if you are running your own business. So I'm going to proceed into the session now. And we'll start off. Here's our agenda, as Kelly just mentioned. Small business organizational structures, identity theft protection, business services for small business owners. This is our names, Eric, Kenny, and Kathy. And really this workshop will focus on the journey of you becoming your own boss and best practices for managing grant funds. Together we'll cover what are the different ways to structure your art business, where should you put your grant awards, what type of bank account should it be separate than your operating account, how do you protect those hard-earned monies against fraud. And that, fraud is obviously something top of mind to so many business owners and individual consumers as well. So I'm going to pass this on to Eric now, and Eric is going to start his part of the presentation on business structures.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric and I'm the branch manager from Flushing Bank, and I'm going to talk about some organizational type of business that you can form and start up your business. Okay, our objective is identify general characteristics, advantage and disadvantage of each these type of small business. So we're going to talk about 5 types of business. The first one is called sole prop, and second one is partnerships, and then LLC, limited liability company, and C Corp and S Corp. What do you know and want to learn about organization type for small business? Anyone has any?
Oh, go ahead, Eric, because this is exactly where we were last time, where these questions came around, and that's where let me get back to that page. Hold on one second for me. Okay, so there's your question. Does anybody have any want to answer Eric's question? What do you know about or want to learn about? We had participants in the last session that specifically honed in on this.
Anyone has any idea of the business or organization?
You could put it in the chat as well if you feel. Okay, otherwise I'll go forward.
Okay, thank you.
And you can listen and you can start to maybe develop some of the questions as we go forward. Feel free to ask any questions that you'd like while you have the experts here. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, these are the 5 common organization type of business you guys can form to start up your business. And all these 5 business type can be open account with the bank. And I'm going to talk about some general ideas and the advantage or disadvantage on all these organization type. The first is the taxation. Taxes on profit are paid through personal tax return except for corporation. So some of the business organization type you can form, and all these income revenue, it will go back to your personal tax return instead of you pay tax on the corporation and then you pay tax on your individual tax return. And the second point, I'm going to talk about the liability and the risk. Responsibility for harm to another person or property or contract dispute. So when you run a business, there is a risk involved. If in case you get sued from somebody, in case of your product, or if you provide a service, if they want to put you on the lawsuit, then they will go to your personal liability. So some of the organization type that can prevent the cost. Management, decision-making authority, continue and transferable. How a business persists and how it is sold. And then expense and formality, cost, legal responsibility. Oops. Okay, the first one I'm going to talk about the sole prop. So what's the advantage and disadvantage? This is the most easiest way to start up your business. Owner has unlimited personal liability, pass-through taxes, personal tax return that I just mentioned. Owner control business, simplest form of organization, lowest cost to form, appropriate for small startup. This is the easiest way to start up your business. You just need to file a tax ID, and then you can use your name, or you can create your DBA name, and then to form this type of company. The general partnership, business associate of 2 or more people. When you open up a business, you may have a partnership, not only by yourself, then you may choose the partnership. Advantage and disadvantage. Owner have personal liability, pass-through taxation, service and cost. Simple to form, low cost.
You need a partnership agreement.
And the limited partnership and limited liability partnership. That is the 2 types of partnership you can form, called general or limited. So the general and limited partnership, general partner one's business, pass through taxation, require a partnership agreement. Liability will depend on how you set up the partnership. If you set up under general partnership or limited partnership. And the LLC is limited liability company, an incorporated hybrid entity with transit of corporation and general partnership or sole prop. So the advantage and disadvantage, greater flexibility than sole prop and partnership in distributing profit, less restrictive than S Corp. Limited liability like corporation, pass-through taxation like sole prop or partnership. And the most complicated one is corporation, and the legal entity created under the law of the state, which has its own privilege and liabilities distinct from those of its member. There's 2 types called C Corp or the S Corp. The C Corp, also called regular corporation, most common for larger companies. As everyone knows, like the Microsoft or Apple, they are all the C Corp. So advantage and disadvantage, limited liabilities. Company is taxed, double taxation and issue, then you will have to pay your individual tax as well after the company tax. Complex to form, and complex ownership and management. Appropriate for a few specific reasons, otherwise choose another organization type. The S Corp owner has limited liability for a corporate shareholder, but pays income tax like sole prop or partner. Advantage and disadvantage, same as C Corp, except for pass-through taxation. So choosing an organization type, how do I decide which structure is best for my business? As an artist, you could be in the business alone with partners or multiple partners. Establish business plan. When you want to start up a business, we all need a business plan, how to plan and plan to success. Initial guidelines, owner operator, partnership, multiple owners, partner with significant liabilities, large venture with multiple owners, and complex financing. Ask your attorney for the advice. Research through Small Business Admin, we call SBA, or the IRS website. There's a ton of information from these two useful websites called SBA or the IRS website that can give you a lot of ideas, even though you can Google it to see which company or which type of organization is the best fit for you. But from our comment, if you want to just start up, then the sole corp or the S corp, that will be the best suitable for you, or even though the LLC. So the 5 key points to remember: the organization type impact how you own and how you run your business. Match your legal structure to business need. Tax liability, management, continuity, and expense. Most common sports small business type, sole corp is the owner, is the same as the owner. So you will be the owner. And the partnership includes pass-through taxation and personal liability. A business plan is the best way to determine the organizational structure right for your business. Katie, next slide. Katie there?
I think we lost Kathy for a second. Kathy, you're muted. I think this could actually be a nice place to pause and perhaps, reflect on which of these business types might be the most appropriate for an individual artist. Because as you pointed out, Eric, there's really no situation, at least none that I could really think of, where an individual artist would need to start an S corp or a C corp. In preparation for this, Kathy and I were really discussing that most likely as an individual artist, you want to look at a sole proprietorship or an LLC. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, Katie, yes.
Okay, I don't see the video working, although it says I'm on video. But as long as you hear me, that's great.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So thank you, Kelly, for pausing there and going over that. That's great. So I'm going to take it from here and go into the next piece of this seminar, which is identity theft protection. So protecting your assets, your identity and other assets, being aware of the risks to your assets prepares you to take steps to reduce those risks. So something obvious, so what is an asset and assets and risks? There's something that asset is something you own that has value, and risk is the potential for harm. You can protect the value of your assets by taking steps to reduce that. So obviously, as the picture here is showing, making sure that you're taking great care in protecting confidential information. Identity theft and fraud. As an aspiring or new business owner, you may possibly have started with an online business presence. You will most likely need inventory and good cash flow to acquire that inventory. Part of that cash flow may be grants. It may be received to commission art projects. You will want to protect your identity and access to your accounts. Identity theft can also impact your credit. It can affect your credit score, your ability to attain a line of credit for operating cash flow, for things like inventory, payroll, and other expenses. So again, it's a very, most people think it's never going to happen to them, but it's very difficult when it happens to the small business owner, because they're trying to establish themselves and then eventually hopefully scale up. And that's the last thing you need, is to be impacted by some sort of identity theft. An online business presence sometimes also is something that you're going to want to be very, very careful with. And we're going to go over emails and things like that that can kind of trick you into responding to somebody maybe that is responding to your website or your online business. So you don't necessarily have to have a brick and mortar or actual storefront to have theft. Theft can obviously is happening, well, behind the scenes, and we're going to go in. So it's identity theft basics is really your identity is your asset, and a crime happens when somebody uses that person's identification without their authority. So how could you be harmed? We're going to go over several ways here. Hi, Hung Yi. I think you're on too. So ways criminals can steal your identity. There's things called phishing that tricks you into giving personal and business information, often through email. It's called phishing, which is phishing by phone, by text messages, spear phishing targeting, which targets this type of phishing, farming, which is fake websites. And again, you could be in business looking for supplies or inventory. You have to be very, very careful as to how you're supplying your information. Your credit card information could be stolen, or if you're using a debit card, I would be very careful about using a debit card, particularly with any kind of online purchases. I'd be more inclined to use a credit card and make sure you're paying that off properly, because a debit card is something that can reach right into your accounts. So if somebody has your account number, you're exposed if you're using your debit card. Social media scamming is obvious. Everybody knows that's also a big potential risk, but it's something to really be aware of because we get so comfortable. Warning signs of identity theft. And this is where you have to be looking at your accounts, and you have to set up certain alerts on your accounts to make sure that if there's a withdrawal that you didn't make, you have to alert the bank right away. Missing bills and statements, credit card transactions not going through. Again, it could be a small little withdrawal. It could be $1. You don't even notice it. But if you're looking at your account regularly, and most business owners that are successful are looking at their dashboard every morning, and that's something you should be aware of. Looking at that business, that financial dashboard every morning. Can you hear me, Kelly? I just want to make sure. Okay. More warning signs of identity theft: letters about accounts you didn't open, business lines of credit you didn't apply for, emails about purchases you didn't make, statements for credit cards you don't have, debt collectors calling you about debts that aren't yours, password or usernames that are not working. All these things are to be really, you should be, especially if you have grant money sitting in your accounts, you have to be really careful or you have income coming in from your artwork. You have to be very careful about all of these potential ways that your accounts can be impacted. Additional warnings: unfamiliar accounts on your credit report, which you should ask for. You should ask, and we did part of this in the last session, but you should ask for a copy of your credit report. We did in one of the previous sessions, and we can always supply you with a link to check your credit. Medical bills for services you didn't receive, health records for conditions you don't have, multiple tax returns or inaccurate tax records, notification about a data breach. And that's something that happens all the time. A notification about a data breach that, it's obviously you're a little taken back when you see that, but it can actually be fraud. So most companies will not be reaching out to you by phone for sure. They'll be sending a formal mail, and always call the 800 number on the back of your cards or your bank. Don't respond to any emails or by the phone number that they are supplying. Steps to minimize. So don't respond to unsolicited requests, protect your mail, sign up for a direct deposit. That's better than having to wait for the mail to show up. And I think most people would have direct deposit these days, but I would say making sure that you're cleaning up any of your financial trash, put it through a shredder. Review your financial accounts regularly. Again, like I said, most successful business owners are looking at their financial dashboard every morning. It may not be their passion. It may not be something that they want to do, but it's something that they do to make sure that their business is healthy and doesn't get impacted by these types of situations. Create alerts on your online banking portal for your business and personal, and also create alerts on your business credit cards and your personal credit cards. Just more ways protect your devices, review your credit report. So here's something that you can check at least, I would say, every 6 to 12 months. Annualcreditreport.com would be a place just to check your credit reports to see if there's anything out there in your name that you don't recognize. Keep your important documents secure. Be aware of disaster-related scams and read scam alerts. So in case, if it does happen, report identity theft and getting help. Create an identity theft report through identitytheft.gov. Work with the credit reporting agencies to respond to the theft. Place a free fraud alert on your credit reports. Dispute inaccurate information and consider placing a freeze, a credit freeze as well. It's something that you have to be extremely proactive about if it does happen. You can't because if this is happening, if somebody's stealing your identity and you're not aware of it, and you're not on top of it, you have a certain number of days, months before you don't really have the same recourse. So you have to be very aware of responding immediately. Communicate with creditors and debtors. So alert them about the fraud, get copies of the documents, ask them to stop. So you want to make sure that these debt collectors are put on notice that this is not you. You want that documented and get written information about the fraudulent account so that you can respond correctly. You probably have to provide this documentation. You want to make sure that this is really off your personal profile. You have federal rights. Again, see identitytheft.gov. You generally have limited liability for fraudulent debts and accounts caused by identity theft unless you let it go too long and you don't react to it right away. Then you do have the liability. Go to usa.gov to learn about your rights in a data breach. And your next presenter is Kenny Wijaya, and he is going to be speaking about banking services.
Hi, everyone. So today I'll be talking about banking services. And I know that on the agenda, we have Section 1, which is banking services, Section 2, which is financing options and sources, and Section 3, which is avoiding fraud and scams.
Should we stop and ask if there's any questions, Kelly?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I mean,
I think so, because we just covered a whole section of a different type of topic. So I'm gonna hold off with you, Kenny, for 1 second, and let's see if there's any questions.
and you all are free to just unmute yourselves and ask a question virtually. We can keep this conversational, or you can drop your question in the chat. Lonnie, you're muted.
I told you before, I'm Mr. Technologically Challenged. Anyway, at what point would you suggest going from a sole proprietorship to an LLC?
Great question. I'm going to let Eric take that.
So the differences between the sole prop and the LLC is the LLC you need to file with the state, and on the tax return, there's more work on the LLC, and the LLC you can have different members. Let's say if you have a different owners, then you may go with the LLC, and but the LLC, they have the limited liability, so you can protect your personal asset. I think that's the main differences. If you decide to go with the sole prop, then if you get sued or any liability, then we'll go after your personal asset as well. So that's the main differences. Am I answer your questions?
Somewhat, but again, I'm just thinking, I've been a sole proprietorship for many years, and just you coming from as a profession, somebody in the finance profession, what would you suggest as a signpost that I go from a sole proprietorship to an LLC?
So depends on your business. If you have a business for years, and if you're touching the risky area, or if you will have the any chances to get sued from any, maybe your customers or the service that you provide, then you may consider the LLC as well. Or if you down the road, if you have any other partners to join your company, then you will need to form an LLC.
But it's something I could still do just as a solo person.
Sorry?
But establishing the LLC, I can still do that as a solo person. Am I understanding
Yes,
that correctly?
you can be the sole member. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lonnie. We have another good question in the chat from AC. I'll read to you all. So AC asks, would you recommend using an email account that is only linked to your bank account, separate from the one you make publicly available?
I would. I would definitely have a separate email account that's separate from your social media and your other public accounts. Just make sure that you are you're looking at it, and make sure that you're checking in on it, and make sure that especially if your bank is trying to reach you, or there is an alert that comes through it. Obviously you can set up alerts on your cell phone, but you would also get alerts via email too. So as long as you can manage the two accounts, I think it's a very good idea. So hacking into personal accounts happens all the time, just because it is it's a good question, because your email is floating out there, because of social media, and it doesn't take much for somebody to hack into a personal account and pose as somebody, or email you, posing as somebody else who's interested in your your information, your business, just to get more information on you. So I mean, I've seen even situations where they ask for a certain amount of funds to cover the expenses of something, something that maybe you have. If they've been reading through your emails, they know what you're doing, what type of line of business you're in. It'd be very easy for them to pose as somebody else. So I think it would be very good for you to do that.
Thanks, Kathy. I have a question for those in the audience that just got a grant, perhaps from us or from someone else. Would you recommend that they put those grant funds in a separate bank account?
Most definitely. And we're going to be getting into, in our next section, some of the different types of accounts. But let's, as a preface to that, it is very important that you put it into a separate account, because if that account is exposed to your operating account, for example, you're either writing checks or you're sending payments, ACH payments or bill pay through your operating account. In any case, that account is more exposed to everybody else. Whereas a savings account where you're storing your grant money is protected in a sense. You don't have bill pay coming out of it. You don't have checks being written. If you do have to write a check, and believe it or not, there are some agencies that you still must write checks to. So if your account number is floating out there, that can create your account could get hacked. But if you're safeguarding it in a reserve account or a savings account, the chances of that getting hacked is very, very, very minimal. So keep most of your funds in that reserve account or that reserve bucket, and move it into your operating account as you need it. So your operating account has less less funds in there that could potentially be be stolen. And it's not that you wouldn't get some of that back. Most likely, if you act on it quickly, the funds can be recovered, unless you mistakenly allowed it to happen. But it takes a while sometimes, and that can impact your cash flow. So if thinking ahead for yourselves as artists, if you have a project that you're working on and you need to purchase inventory, now you're stuck waiting for these funds to be returned to your account. So that's why I say put it in a very safeguarded in a reserve account. It doesn't. Is there any other questions? Anything, Kelly? Should I go forward?
Don't see
No.
me.
Okay, good. Great. Okay, great. So Kenny is up next.
Yes.
Kenny's going to speak about banking services.
Correct. Here we go. So the agenda, like I mentioned before, is we're going to talk about banking services. We're also going to be discussing financing options and sources, and also avoiding fraud and scams. So for banking services, we're going to go deeper into building your banking relationship, factors in selecting the right bank, account services such as check-in to transfer funds as needed to your operating account, debit cards, savings and other deposit accounts, which is exactly what Kathy was just mentioning before, a good place to safeguard your grants away from a higher transaction check-in accounts. We're also going to be discussing about other services such as payroll services and merchant services. So one of the things, the first thing that we want to talk about is building your banking relationship. So the moment that you walk into the bank, you should definitely meet the bank staff, which is usually the loan officer and the account and branch manager, such as me or Eric. Now there's some myths about banks, which is banks don't want business because they're too small, which is a myth. Banks don't make any small loans, and you need a perfect credit history. Loan applications might take months, and fees are not affordable. So some factors in selecting the right bank includes customer service. Of course, I think that's one of the most important things that most clients actually banks with Flushing Bank. Access to your accounts and money. Now, there are more protections for consumers than businesses when there's access to your accounts and money. We're also talking about technology, specialized small business products and services. So some account services includes business checking accounts, business debit cards, savings accounts, CDs or certificate of deposit, retirement or employee benefits account, business credit cards, payroll services, cash management, merchant services, and other services. So for account services, every bank should have something called the fee schedule, which is basically a listing of how much the bank will charge for you to sign up for any of these services. So cost of services and transactions, brochures and fee schedules for features and service costs, including options for overdraft protection, the account disclosures, ways to get fees waived and reduced. Account services, timing, ease, and security of payment transactions. So most payment transactions do not occur in real time, and writing a check or initiating a bank transfer when you don't have funds available can result in costly charges, which is overdrafts and return charges and things of that nature. So we have account services such as direct deposit, automated clearinghouse debits such as ACH, wire transfers. We have debit blocks to ensure that the account cannot be debited for any amount. We have lockbox services. We have remote deposit capture, which is basically scanning checks in your own office for you to deposit. Additional banking services includes payroll services. So the benefits of the payroll service is easier record keeping, such as for retirement, workers' compensation, insurance payments, federal and state taxes, and it will break it down, the reports for each employee. Also, another benefit is direct deposit to employee accounts. Payroll account is separate from the operating account, and zero balance feature to manage payroll and avoid fraud. So additional banking services, you could manage cash by, this is just some of the options, which is discussing the options with your bank, keeping detailed records, reporting all your cash income, and considering remittance or wire transfer services from a bank. And you could also increase your sales by using merchant services. And that includes credit and debit cards, point of sale card reader terminals, marketing support, gift prepaid cards, online payments, and orders. Tips for reconciling accounts. So reconcile accounts monthly at a minimum. Work with your bank to address discrepancies or suspicious activity immediately. Verify the amount paid for checks with the amounts you wrote them for. Retain reports from remote deposit scanner software. So these are just some of the financing options, which is in section 2 now. So one of them is savings, gifts, and informal loans. The other one is term or installment loans, lines of credits and credit cards, special purpose loans, and other financing options. So on the next slide, we're going to go over each one a little bit. So the first one is savings, gifts, and informal loans. This is the #1 form of financing used by startups. The gifts may be counted as business capital. Please consult with your accountant for that. Payments towards informal loans or investment by family, friends, or other individuals must be part of the cash flow. Another financing option is the term or installment loans. So usually the funds received once loan is approved, one disbursement, set amount and period of time, such as the example that we see here on the left. Repaid in installments with interest. The purpose is for financing purchase of assets, secured by assets to be purchased, and new application required for additional funds.
So this is, and this also shows you the example of the loan amount, the monthly payment amount, and how many months it may take you to pay it off. So this would be built into your budget.
So another financing options is lines of credits and credit cards, I think, which is the most popular one that most businesses actually get.
Right.
So lines of credits and credit cards is generally secured, used to finance any business expenses such as inventory, requires annual credit review and renewal based on performance, such as the length of the business and the length of the business, tax return, personal and business credit reports, no lump sum disbursement on opening, monthly payments based on outstanding balance. So basically the line of credit is you only take out the money that you need to use, and then you're only repaying that money that you have used. You don't have to take the whole lump sum as of the other one, which is the loans.
Another important point here also is the annual credit review. And that's very, very important for a new or small business owner to know that that there's going to be a look at the tax returns, making sure that you keep your information properly kept. It's done well. It's done through an accountant, or it's not something like when you have a review, you'll be asked, let's say, to provide your tax return or other statements that you have at other banks. You want to make sure that you keep everything organized, so that when you go to either take out a line of credit or you need a review, you have everything at your fingertips, and you're not trying to send in things piecemeal, because that doesn't look good. You want to be very organized about keeping your information and presenting it well when you're looking for a line of credit or you're in review.
Another financing options is the business credit cards. It requires full payment of balance at the end of the grace period month to avoid paying interest. They're rarely reported to consumer credit bureaus unless account is delinquent, and can be issued for various authorized users. Now, the liability for unauthorized use of credit cards can be greater for business credit cards than for consumer cards.
Right.
Another one is the government programs for small businesses. So these are SBA guaranteed lending programs. Participating lenders make and service term loans and lines of credit for which the SBA extends a guarantee of repayment. Guarantee allows lenders to approve loans they would not otherwise be able to make. The SBA microloan program provides direct loans and grants to eligible nonprofit microlenders to make loans up to $50,000. And as you can see on the bottom here, there's the SBA website, so you can find out a little bit more about that, about the SBA loan programs.
Is there any questions at this point? Because I know we're going over, detailed information. Is there any more questions in the chat? I just want to make sure.
No questions
Or
at this moment. I have a question, if that's okay.
yes, of course.
Get this sort of clarify how this relates to artists and the arts. I think often the concept of loans isn't really in the zeitgeist for the cultural sector. When you talk about individual artists, I think it might be helpful if you could perhaps, like I think as an individual artist myself, we sort of internalize, oh, well, that's for different types of businesses. That's not for artists. That's not for me. Could you maybe give an example, either real or hypothetical, as to when an artist might be viable for a loan?
Sure. And I'll let Kenny also expand on this, but you generally for a traditional bank, let's say a Flushing Bank type of bank, you have to be in business for 2 years. And that's something that's really pretty much across the board for most banks that you have to be able to supply 2 years financial statements and tax returns, financial statements, bank statements. So there is a point where you certainly are able to apply for a line of credit, which helps with inventory. It helps with scaling up your business. So it's really like any other business out there in that sense. So under the 2-year mark is where you would be looking at the SBA. You would be looking at the SBA is located. We could always give you contacts. Most colleges house an SBA, whether it's LaGuardia College, and I've worked with them extensively, the SBA there, as well as your college. And it's similar to the SBA. It's called Small Business Development, SBDC, but it does the same thing, and you can tap into both SBDC and SBA. And those are both organizations I would tap into prior to the 2-year mark. And they could assist with grants and loans and things like that to help you get to the point of 2 years. Once you've had your 2-year mark, you can now start to go to a traditional bank for lending. Anything, Kenny? Anything you would add to that?
Yes, actually, it's from my own personal experience, which is I actually had a client that has opened up a dance studio. So of course he needed to get a loan. Unfortunately, the client doesn't have that business length yet, so they haven't been in business for 2 years, but they do find a place to make this dance studio, and they really needed the funds as soon as possible. So unfortunately, at that point in time, the bank cannot do anything for them. However, I was able to direct them to go to the SBA website for them to actually get their loans from them. And I believe it turned out well. And because
We lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So afterwards, the customer actually came back and opened up a business account. So I'm assuming that the SBA was actually approved. The SBA loan was approved.
And many times they are. Go ahead. Another question? Do we have another question? I think I heard somebody, or we have somebody in the chat.
I don't see any questions. People are just saying that that's a good example.
Okay, great, fantastic. That is a great example, Kenny. And I had some very similar examples when where I had clients that I would send to the SBA, and they would get lending. And once they hit the 2-year mark, the SBA would send them back to me and say, okay, now they're ready to come back to you for traditional lending. So it's something that we have very good relationships with the SBA and the SBDC.
So Kathy, another question from Carrie.
Sure.
Carrie
Sure.
asks, would it be possible for a sole proprietorship to apply for a small loan for a project which needed a certain amount of funds in order to begin, if their quote day job provided enough income to be able to pay off that loan?
That would be tough. That would be a tough one because their day job, it's, you know, and Kenny, I'm going to let Kenny take this because he's day to day in the lending world. But go ahead, Kenny.
Yes, I mean, exactly what Kathy said. It's going to be very tough because they're using, basically you are telling them that the way that you're going to be able to repay this loan is through your actual employment, which is your day job. So that would probably be going to be a personal loan, or perhaps you might even tap into a credit card or something like that in order for you to get that loan to start that project, because it's going to be very tough for you to get that loan.
Okay. Great. All right, so we're at government programs for small businesses.
Okay, so
Now, this is more information that you may.
Yes, so these are just some of the government programs for small businesses. We have the U.S. Department of Agriculture that does grants, loans, and loan guarantees. The website is listed over there. The U.S. Department of the Treasury, it grants to support small business lenders and technical assistance providers. We also have the U.S. Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency, which is the technical assistance to entrepreneurs through a national network.
So this is good information to take down some of these points here.
Okay, so these are the financing sources by stage of the business. So as a startup, more than likely you're going to get your financing sources from personal savings, family and friends. You might even get into the crowdfunding capital and peer-to-peer lending platforms. By the early stage, those are the same three that you'll probably use. And then on the maturing stage, you get the loan marketplace and fintech online lenders. You also get the angel investors and venture capital firms, community development financial institutions and nonprofit lenders. And once you're in the maturing and established business, which is what Kathy was talking about that 2-year tax return, then banks and credit unions could start financing your loans.
So, and also, and just before you get to banks and credit unions, the CDFIs are something to, and nonprofit lenders are something to really take a look at, because those are community organizations that are throughout all of our boroughs, but they are organizations that help people become entrepreneurs and help them try to identify grants that could help them start to build their business. So a lot of people don't realize that there is actually a lot of information, a lot of opportunity out there, especially with your community organizations that are and we can always give you referrals to some of them, but there are community organizations that are specifically looking to help people become an entrepreneur or a small business. Make sure to help the small business survive and thrive in the community.
So here are some guide of improving your chance to get a business loan. So the number one thing is always keep business and personal transactions separate. Avoid commingling the funds. Maintain accurate bookkeeping and consult with a tax advisor.
Right, and one of the things there to keep, when we say about keeping business and personal transactions separate, you don't want to be applying for a credit and it's really just a mess between your personal and your business transactions, and that's going to be something that's going to create create a denial in funding. And where if you keep that organized and very accurate and organized, it doesn't send red flags to the lender that this person doesn't understand the difference between your personal funds and your business funds. So these are some things that you want to make sure that you're very precise about.
So also improving your chance of getting a business loan, you need to remember the 5 C's of credit, which is capacity, ability to repay a loan, the collateral, security to repay the loan, the credit history, credit performance of the owners and the business, conditions, terms of loans and business environment, and character, your integrity, reputation, and references. Resources by government agencies to help you avoid fraud and scams.
So we're kind of capping off the end of this section with something that again comes back to it comes back to something that's, we're reiterating it at the end of our end of our presentation here, the last, and then we'll go into our chat rooms as Kelly was describing before. But this is something, again, be really aware of this, because this can impact your business. So that's why we're circling back around here again to finish off with how to prevent cash flow and credit interruptions. So go ahead. You can take it, Kenny.
All right. So resources by government agencies to help you avoid fraud and scams. We have business email compromise. So it's a scam targeted to companies that perform wire transfer payments. Data breach, leak or spill of sensitive, protected, or confidential information. Denial of service attack, interruption of authorized users' access to their own systems. Email account compromise, scam to request payments to fraudulent locations. Malware, scareware, software intended to disable computer systems. Phishing, spoofing, forged or fake electronic documents. Ransomware, payments demanded to access companies' proprietary data. So the FTC Division of Consumer and Business Education works to help you learn how to avoid scams. So common scams targeted to small business includes pay for supplies that were not ordered, donate to fake charities, malware, fake home-based business opportunities. Some resources includes publications and blogs with tips to avoid scammers, videos, workshop, and guidance on getting credit, financial tech, and cybersecurity.
And this is our information here, so that you can contact all of us. So I'm curious to know how many of our participants have an online business or are thinking about having an online business. Probably not the brick and mortar. I would say you're probably you would be started with an online type of business. Do you have a sense of, Kelly, do you have a sense of it, or do some of our participants, do we think they already have a running online business?
Let's do a poll. Show of hands.
Yep.
Or you can raise your hand if you have an online business. AC says that they're thinking about starting an online one. To clarify, we have to open a separate bank account for our business, ?
Yes, you should open up a separate business account for your business.
Okay. Looks like we have a couple people here that have an online business. Some people that are considering it.
And again, that, so an online business is crucial to most businesses these days, whether even if you have a storefront, having an online portion of your business is very important. Again, your exposure to social media and how you're promoting yourself also opens you up to what we were just speaking about, different fraudsters. So those are the reasons why you want to be very aware and protective of your business. Do we want to do our breakout rooms, Kelly?
Sure. So we thought that this could be a nice time to give you all a chance to get to know each other individually. So in a moment, I'm going to put everyone into smaller groups of 3. And in these small groups, you could chat together after you do a round of introductions. We have a couple of discussion questions for you to explore. Um, so Kathy, you wanna share the discussion question?
Sure. So after, after seeing this presentation, getting a feel for the type of business structures that there are, the potential to fraud and how you're protecting yourself, and the type of business services that are available when you go to a bank and you meet a branch manager and you start to open your business accounts and establish a business relationship. How many of you would see yourself as an entrepreneur or not? So, and that would be a question to each one of you. Do you see yourself as an entrepreneur, running your own business, or not, and why? So that would be my question for the chat rooms. And if anybody else has any other questions, we'll include that.
Yeah. So question number one is really, do you see yourself as an entrepreneur? And then the second question is how do you plan to utilize the information you learned today to reach short or long-term goals? And so if you give me just a moment, I'm going to put everybody in breakout rooms. You're going to have about 3 or 4 people per room, and I am opening them up now.
Perfect.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. I don't know if you can hear me, but hi, I'm Kelly. I'm a program manager.
Hello.
Hello.
I just got an email reminding me this was happening, and I just so I chime in, but I missed it, didn't I?
Anyways, you didn't completely miss it. We actually just broke for breakout rooms to get to know
Okay.
in a smaller setting. We just started, so I'm happy to transfer you into one of the breakout rooms. And the purpose of that was really just to get to know each other and talk a little bit about whether or not you feel like entrepreneurship could be right for you, short and long-term goals. So I'm sure you can, just join and introduce yourself to the group and follow their lead if that sounds good.
You know what? It's actually not a great time for me to be on camera, but thank you for letting me know.
Well, no, you don't have to be on camera. It's up to you. Feel free to sign off, or if you want me to transfer you into a breakout room and stay off camera, that's completely fine.
You know what? Yeah, transfer me over to one of the breakout rooms, and we'll see how it goes. And if it doesn't make sense, I'll just pop off. I appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. I'm gonna send you into room 3 with Eric and Midori. Should get a notice momentarily. Hi, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. For someone who's just joining us, we just got back from breakout rooms where we talked about what it might be like to be an entrepreneur if people feel like this path is for them, as well as how they might use the information we discussed during this workshop to inform short and long-term goals. So we have about 15 more minutes together. So I would love to just get a couple volunteers to share what you discussed in your group. And if we don't have any volunteers, I'm going to start picking on high school or school students because that's what I do best. Any volunteers to share?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Can we hear from someone to summarize what you discussed in your breakout room?
I think I'll talk for our group because I seem to monopolize stuff. The old man went off. And I thank my co-conspirators, if you will. But I think we raised more questions than we answered. I brought up that I think that artists are all entrepreneurs, but not entrepreneurs in the traditional sense, if you will. We all have our own distinctions that we have to deal with. And that in turn, when we're dealing with more mainstream kind of entrepreneurship, we're distinct, whether we're performing artists or visual artists. And also we talked a little bit about where we hope to be in a few years in terms of our art form and how we're going to present ourselves as entrepreneurs a few years down the line. At least I threw that out there and we all started giving that some thought. So that's the short version.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Lonnie.
That's great.
Anyone else want to speak for their group?
I'm going to speak for the group that we were in, but I would love Alexandra and I'm going to say it right. Gizambule. So I would love for them to actually weigh in a little bit, but they're both from the dance industry. So we spoke about the protection of having an LLC rather than a sole proprietorship, and then also the referral to some of our connections at the contacts at the SBDC right there in LaGuardia College that I would highly recommend. I had as I was sharing with them, I had a client who came to me, wasn't a client yet. He was opening up a music school, and I was able to refer him over there. They helped him with his business plan. They helped him with his grants. They helped him with his initial funding, and he graduated from a program that gave him even more grants. And then he came back to me to scale up his business so that he could add classes and purchase more inventory. And he's done phenomenally well. So, I would, gladly share my contact over there as well. So just email me.
Other thoughts, reflections?
For me, I thought this was a very great course. I thought this was a great course. Basically helping me understand the financial side of having an artistic career, and like being able to fund your projects properly, and being able to properly analyze every single funds that goes into your works. So I thought this was a great lesson for me.
Great, thanks, Hugo. I think there's one more group we haven't heard from. Corrales, do you think you could summarize what you all talked about?
Yeah, so basically we all talked about how to get in contact with your business specialist, and like how to like phone a person and how like get in contact with them, and like how each of us are starting like our own thing. Like we talked about how someone in our group was starting like their singing business, so that's very cool.
Great, thanks, Corrales. And then that's actually a nice segue into the fact that the entire team at Flushing Bank has generously offered their contact information and encourages you all to reach out via email, which I'll circulate after this call, or even just stop by the bank and chat with them. So I definitely encourage you all to take them up on that opportunity. Flushing Bank team, any parting words, pieces of advice or wisdom?
Just would love for somebody to reach out, contact us, ask us questions, and myself being on the board, just keep me in the loop of what you're doing. If your events, if I can attend them, I absolutely will. We definitely want to be that friendly face for you to ask questions, a safe place to ask questions. You're not walking into if you walk into Eric's branch or you walk into Kenny's branch, you're not walking in not knowing somebody. You already know somebody in the Queens area, which is great. So you're not walking in to a bank feeling, that stressful feeling like, where do I begin? Who do I know? So I think, take advantage of our contact, and we're here to continue to help and answer questions.
Excellent. I'm also just dropping their contact information in the chat, and I'm going to follow up via email after this workshop and circulate their contact information via email, as well as a recording of both the conversation we had together and the slides, if that's all right with you, Kathy. And
Sure.
Finally, per usual, we're going to circulate a survey as well if you have thoughts about what we could do better or what you might like to see from our professional development program moving forward. So that's a wrap for tonight. We're going to end a little bit early. Thank you to the whole Flushing Bank team, or rather branch team. We really appreciate you lending your expertise for our population of artists, creatives, and thanks to everyone for taking a Thursday night to spend with us to learn about arts entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Kelly.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Everybody be safe and be well.
You too. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
have a good night,
everyone.
everyone.